Hey, Maggie, welcome to the podcast. I am so incredibly excited to have you. And to everyone listening, I've already introduced you once, but I want you to introduce yourself because you are a absolute powerhouse when it comes to relationships. I think healing relationships, I think type A high achieving women feel more powerful in their relationships, which is why I wanted to have you on the podcast. So welcome. Thank you for coming and tell us who you are and who you help.
Okay, hi everyone, and thank you for having me on the podcast where I just feel I'm having fun already. So much fun. So, my name is Maggie Reyes. I am a master certified life coach. I help type A women have better marriages. I like to name things, so I've created many of my own titles. So I call myself a modern marriage mentor
Love it.
because a lot of the things I talk about in my coaching practice are mentorship things. So there's coaching where we look for the answer from inside you and what your highest inner wisdom is guiding you to do. And then there's research tells us that if you cultivate your friendship, you're going to have a better time. So I'm just going to tell you to cultivate friendship. So I do
Yeah.
both coaching and mentorship. And I love talking about relationships. One of my favorite sort of outcomes that a lot of my clients have is they come to me for help in the romantic relationship. And then they're like, but all my relationships got better. Like my relationship with myself, my relationship with my parents or my children or my coworkers or my boss. So if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, she's a marriage coach, I'm not married, just sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. We're
Enjoy this
gonna
conversation.
you're gonna take something away and you'll see like,
Absolutely.
oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So I just invite that person. We're waving at
Absolutely.
you. Hi.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. And also, let's not forget, you are the host of a very popular podcast, the Marriage Life Coach podcast, which after this conversation, I think that so many people listening are going to run over there and start listening because I really think of Maggie as someone that has so much wisdom to share, especially. And I love that you said that it's not just a romantic partnership, I know who you work with
Yeah.
primarily, but
Mhm.
it's this is like relationships in every corner of our life. And I love that you said, especially the relationship with ourselves. And I
Yes.
wonder for you, because the reason that I even wanted to have you on was you mentioned something. I had Maggie come on for my group, the Unstoppable group. She came on and she did a workshop for my clients and it was amazing. And I just loved it. And I don't know if you remember, I was like raising my hand for you to like
Yes.
coach me
That
during
was
the
so fun.
workshop.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, Maggie, hold on. I have a hypothetical scenario. And it's like never hypothetical, but you mentioned something, a concept
Yeah.
in the workshop, and I was hoping that we kind of explore it and talk about it today.
Sure.
You talked about the power of one. And I think
Yes.
that this is so incredibly helpful. Can you describe the power of one, how it can, let's just start with just describing. How do you describe the power of one?
Okay, so here's how this came about. I work with individuals, helping individual humans who identify as women have better marriages.
Mhm.
And there's a cultural narrative in our society that it takes two to tango, that you need both of you, that if both of you aren't either doing couples coaching or couples counseling together, then it's not going to work or something like that.
Yeah.
And I really had to understand for myself because I started out just working with individuals and it was working. And I had to wait, what's going on? What's happening here? And
Mhm.
so, in my own process of deepening my own understanding, having coached individuals and seeing it work, what I found was in psychology, there's a wonderful theory called systems theory. And it's a very simple hypothesis, which is when one element in a system changes, the other elements in the system respond to the change. They respond. That doesn't mean they do everything you ever wanted them to do. Somebody listening to us right now needs to know that. They simply respond.
Yeah.
What happens is if there's a foundation of love in your relationship,
Mm.
that response is going to build and harness and cultivate that foundation of love. I always like to say that some of you think you're married to jerks, but you're just married to good people having a bad day.
Mhm.
And some of you really are married to jerks. And if you are, that's data we want to have. I'm going to figure that out.
Right.
So, in essence, the power of one is really this idea that one person can change the world and one person can change a marriage. And then we test it and we see how that works and what that looks like. But
Mm.
no matter what you're going through in your life, we all know people like Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs changed technology. Did he have a whole team of people helping him? Yes. But did he come with a vision that technology could be elegant and simple and clean, right? And then from there, all of these other things, and then all the groups of people that helped him do that, right?
Mm.
I love Oprah Winfrey. I grew up watching
Mhm.
her on TV. It's like one woman with one show was like the TV mom for
Right.
a whole generation, right?
Right.
And I don't know, anyone who grew up with Oprah like I did, we remember doing gratitude journals and writing things we were grateful for, or decluttering when she would have her decluttering,
Mhm.
shows. Or I'll still remember she bought there were sheets for your bed made of t-shirt material. And at the time, it was the coolest thing you could ever imagine because
Yeah.
sheets for your
Yeah.
bed were never made of other materials. I don't know back then. And I was like, well, Oprah has t-shirt sheets. I'm getting t-shirt sheets, right? So one person in many industries and in many cases can have such a huge impact
Mm.
on the world. So just imagine on your family.
Right. Right. I think I feel like the truth of that resonates for me particularly. And I'm going to use myself as an example just because you and I are talking. But I think
Yeah.
that what I see come up really often, especially for high achievers, and we both serve high achieving women, is
Yeah.
this dichotomy where high achieving women are working really hard and they are like go-getters, they get the job done, they're like the A+ gold star students that are
Yes.
really accomplishing so much in their life. Like they have the categorized list of things to do and they're doing
Yes.
amazing at work. And I think that there is a sense, and tell me what you think and how the power of one kind of plays into this. There's a sense that they're doing so much already
Yeah.
that in their partnership, they don't want to have to do. There's like
Mhm.
I can already sense
Yeah.
like the entitlement there, but there's like
Yeah.
they don't want to have to also do the power of one there.
Right.
So what do you
Use
say
it
to
there.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I
they're
love
already
that
doing the power of
question.
one they're doing it everywhere else. Like
Yeah. Why
yeah,
should I
what do you
do
think
it
the
here too? So
yeah,
here's the thing. There's a couple of ways I like to answer this question. So we're just going to go with I'm going to walk you through both of them.
yeah.
The first one is why should I do this thing? Whether it's in your marriage, whether it's at work with your team, like there's some area of your life where you want to see a change. You're like, why should I do it? The first reason is because you're the one who wants something different.
Mm,
So if we, in my case, I talk to, women either married to men or married to women, and I talk to them like, well, what does your partner think about what's happening? They're like, oh, they're happy. They're fine. They could go on like this for 30 years. They don't care.
right.
So it's like, why do you need to be the one who does it if we talk to your boss or your team, if it's a working example,
Right.
right? They're
Right.
happy. They're fine. They could go on like this for 10 more years. They don't care. So the
Mm,
first reason is because you are the person who wants something different than how it is right now. This is just the most essential at the
that's
most
true.
basic
Yeah.
level.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second thing is what I want to impress upon anyone listening to us right now is not that you do all the work.
Mhm.
It is simply that you go first.
Mm,
And that philosophy or example bears true in any situation. So, like I was mentioning, Steve Jobs and Oprah as our examples,
mhm,
right? They
mhm,
had a whole team of people helping them, but they went first with the vision of, in Oprah's case, what television could be. Like she decided television should help people feel better right now. It didn't have to
yeah.
be tabloid TV or whatever. She had that vision, and then all she went first, and
Mm,
then she had a team of people helping her execute that and create the thing she had the vision for. So in our personal relationships, it's the same idea. I go first. Maybe I express gratitude. Maybe I forgive first. Maybe I look for the most generous interpretation of something that happened. Maybe I'm kind. I go
mm,
first.
mhm,
Then the person responds. Then we see. Sometimes we have
mhm,
to collect some data. We have to see. But that
mhm.
is really the essence of what's happening. It's not you're doing
Yeah.
everything, you're just going first.
Right. And I wonder what you think about this because the collecting I love collecting data. For
Yeah,
anyone that knows me, I like love all the evidence. I love all the data. I like to
yeah,
analyze it all.
yeah,
And I think that what I have found, especially since I discovered coaching, especially like just in my marriage, of course, I had such a shift in how I felt. I always felt like I had a good marriage, but it felt like I felt so much more connected after coaching
yes,
and understanding that, oh, my thoughts about myself and my partner are creating my experience of this marriage.
yeah,
And so I can decide, right? Like kind of I
yes,
get to go first. And
yes,
I think that the part that I wonder how many women listening to this struggle with, because I know I did, is we've gone first and I don't even have a timeline, right? So it's like
yeah,
I'm gone first. I'm not even expecting something necessarily to change,
yeah,
but things aren't as good as you want them to be.
hmm,
And I know that I have a tendency. So if I have a tendency, I'm wondering if anybody listening has a tendency, but it's like we want them to be a little bit different than
Yeah.
they are in the partnership. And we're like, well, we're doing all of these things. Look at how we're
Yeah.
showing up. We have the generous
Yeah.
interpretation. We're going first. When is it going to be my turn? When is it going to when does the relationship start to shift? So how do you decide when you collect the data? How do you start
Yeah.
to feel the shift in the tide?
I think that there's there's nuance to this, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have a program in 6 months, I have a program that's 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a simple answer. I'm going to give
Yeah.
you a simple answer for today, but
Yeah.
for everyone listening, like there is nuance and there are situations that are going to go outside of what I'm going to explain right now.
Yeah.
The first thing is to decide that you're going to go first, as we said,
Mm-hmm.
because it's who you want to be in the world, not for your partner's response.
Mm.
So when you say, I'm going to go first, and you want to see how they respond, and we're collecting data, that's from a very clean, curious place. When I say clean, that means there's no emotional attachment to the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
The way you presented the question, there is an
Yeah.
emotional attachment to the outcome,
Absolutely.
which
Yeah.
is actually very manipulative, which is, I'm going to be
Absolutely.
nice to you, so you're nice to me, which is very
Yes.
transactional.
Yes. Yeah,
And
it
I
feels
will,
very like, well, I was good. Like, how come you're not being
yeah,
good back? It's very, yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So what I want to say about that is often that will fail because it feels
Mm,
transactional to the other person. And they will
mm,
not be inclined to do anything because they feel like,
mm,
well, the only reason you're doing this is because you want something from me. So that
mm-hmm.
is not my intention when I talk about going first.
Mm,
I want to make this really abundant, explicitly
yeah.
clear is the reason you go first goes to the first thing I said, is because you want something different,
Mm,
right? Then you still want to see how your partner responds. You want to see, do they respond with delight? Do they respond with annoyance? What is their response? That allows you to determine, what kind of relationship do I want? What kind of relationship do they want? Where do we overlap? Where do we not overlap? So in the going first realm, first is because
mm-hmm.
of who you want to be in the world. Now, what will
Mm-hmm.
happen in a lot of cases in my situation is I will work with people who have done different things. They've gone to workshops or weekend retreats, or they've tried a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
different things before.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say what you said, this, I've already gone first. I'm like, well, but have you really?
Mm-hmm. Right. Like,
Like,
let's be
have you,
honest. Let's like really
like,
be honest about
yeah,
the texture of what you're going first was really like. I think that's what you're talking about.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's something that we would investigate. And that's why I say there's nuance. For some of
Yeah.
the people listening, they really have put their best, most loving, most generous
Mm,
foot forward without any twinge of manipulative energy whatsoever.
yeah.
And that could be your case if you're listening to us. Then you say,
Mm-hmm.
well, is this the marriage that I want to have, or is this the relationship I want to stay in? Then we have
Mm-hmm.
to ask some maybe difficult questions.
Mm.
Um, so that's one part of it. The other part of it is you ask something of like, well, when does the marriage change? Right?
Yeah, like
Like,
I'm
well,
like imagining this
when does
road
it
where it's
change?
like when do we start to, together like on this journey that we're on together, when do we start to kind of
Yeah.
find a new path almost,
And that's
right?
where there's nuance
Yeah.
involved because one
Yeah.
element is how you're showing up, cleaning up your
Hmm.
side of the table, doing things differently
Hmm.
with no manipulative energy whatsoever, just genuinely
Hmm.
from this is who I want to be in the world, whether it's with you or whoever's in front of me right now. That's
Hmm.
one part of it. I want to kind of, it's not really a detour, but I want to give people a specific example of what I mean by going first and seeing how your
Yeah.
partner responds to make it
Yeah.
really grounded. And then we
Yeah.
can still investigate this a little more.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite examples to give was even before I was a coach, I was just talking to my best friend and I have her permission to share this story. She always chuckles when she hears me say it. It was many, many years ago. And she's in a completely delighted situation now, but she called me and she was frustrated with her husband.
Hmm.
As one does, you call your best friend, you're like, oh, that kind of
Hmm.
energy. And I was, even back then, was like, well, have you thanked him lately for any of the things that he does to make your life easier? And she was
Oh,
very much not having it. She's like, why
yeah.
should I thank him for things he's
Yeah.
supposed to be doing in the first place? Like, that's ridiculous. Why would you make this suggestion?
Right.
And I
Right.
was like, well, I don't know. I'm really happy with my husband, and you
Hmm.
seem really frustrated with yours. So I'm just giving you this like idea.
Yeah.
You might want to try it.
Right. Right.
And, we just kept talking. And then a couple weeks later, she calls me and she's like, oh, you're never going to believe what happened. And, I'm used to believing things now. what is it? Alice in Wonderland has this quote, I believe it's 8 impossible things before breakfast or something like that. Like I believe
Yeah.
impossible things all the time.
Yeah.
So she's like, "You're never gonna believe what happened." I'm like, "Oh, tell me what's new, what's happening." He stopped at Starbucks and got me my favorite coffee, and he hasn't done that in 5 years. It's amazing. It's so
Mm.
romantic. I love that he did that. I'm like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, that sounds so great. Like that's so cool.
Mm.
So she's like, no, 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 you don't understand. I started doing that thanking thing you said. And then what happened was
Uh,
like it would make him smile. And then he started thanking me for things. And then
mhm.
I started smiling more.
Mhm.
And then we're just nicer to each other, like overall, even
Mhm.
when we're not thanking each other. And now, it has been 5 years since he's stopped at
Mm.
Starbucks on the way home to just do something nice, just because for no reason. She's like, it's not my birthday, it's not anything special. So when I
Yeah.
say you go first and I
Yes.
say then we see,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This is just a very concrete example
Yeah.
of she just went first
Mhm.
and then he didn't do, he didn't call me. We didn't have a conversation. Like
Right.
that other person didn't need to be in the room. He was just
Right.
responding naturally to the way she was showing up.
Yes. Oh, that's so powerful. This actually is bringing up this personal
Yeah.
experience for me. I felt like for me, after I had definitely after my son, and then definitely when we had, both my kids, I felt like, in our family, it felt kind of like we are all getting by. Like there's this sense
Hmm.
of like we're like kind of hitting all the mile markers and we connect as a family, but like I wanted to be better. And I think over time, it almost becomes like you and your partner, me and my partner, it felt like, okay, we're going through, but like that connection, that love, that deep, like just deep love. It felt like
Yeah.
it was on hold because we're taking care of these two like jelly beans
Hmm.
running around. And
Hmm.
I remember this was after coaching. This was after having a really tough time with my son. I remember my husband is the best dad, the best dad. And I never thought to tell him. It's like, it's almost like I assumed he knew that he's such a good dad. I assumed that he just like knows how amazing of a dad he is. I never commented on it. I never thought about it. I didn't ever take a moment to like really appreciate it. And I remember
Hmm.
we were sitting on the couch, we'd put the kids to bed, and I was like, I just want to tell you, like, you're the best. You're the best dad. And like my husband actually, he looked so surprised. Like he was like kind of almost caught off guard that I said that. And just that one sentence, it was true. It felt so um like I had to say it because it just felt so true to me.
Hmm.
And it's like what you were saying, he just had this smile on his face and you could see it's almost like his body relaxed,
Hmm.
that he was being recognized and appreciated. I think he
Hmm.
didn't know to recognize and appreciate himself
Yeah.
either, right? And I was like, "You're just so amazing. You're just the best dad." It's almost like I think for me, I might do it in little moments, but it
Hmm.
doesn't feel like
Yeah.
um, this constant
Yeah.
occurrence at all.
Yeah. Imagine doing it every day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
the things I do in my program is called the Marriage MBA, and one of the things I do is we have a 30-day gratitude challenge,
Mm,
and it's a little bit different than maybe some of the gratitude challenges people have in general, which is you're focusing on gratitude towards your partner. But
mm.
if you feel underappreciated in your relationship, you also do gratitude towards yourself. What are you
Yeah.
proud of? What do you want to just thank yourself for doing? And so you could take it in both directions. And I am a big fan of doing the things I ask my clients to do. So one of the times I gave the challenge, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the challenge too. And it's 30 days and you just check off each day.
Yeah.
And I, had all the best intentions to do it exactly how they were doing it. I was like, wait, I counted up one day how many times I thanked my husband for something. And I think it was like 7 times. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to do this because it's just become like, I'm not going to use the
Mhm.
checklist because it's just
Right.
become like how I work now, how I think now.
Right.
But I was fascinated to notice that we both have a culture in our relationship where we thank each other for the smallest thing. So we might be going to
Mhm.
sleep one night the other day. My husband was like, it was a weekend. He's like, oh, thank you for such a great day today.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Mm.
So imagine that. Right. And my husband
Mhm.
likes to cook and often, cooks for our dinners. I'm like, oh, this dinner was like delicious. Thank you for
Mhm.
this amazing dinner that you made. But it's
Mhm.
constantly for different things.
Right. It's almost like this
So
has become the texture of your relationship. It's like it's just happening in
yes.
the background. You're not thinking very much about it.
It's just your automatic
Ah,
response. So that day that I tried to sort of quantify it, I was just going to check off one box, right?
right.
I was like, oh, this is just how we communicate with each other.
Mm,
And what happens in a relationship, so gratitude and sex are two of the glues
mhm,
that really glue relationships together. Whenever somebody needs help in the relationship, two easy places to work on is like, how often are you having sex? What's the sex like? What's going
mhm,
on? Is there anything in the way?
mhm,
And how often do you express gratitude? And
mhm,
immediately we can just have quick wins just from
mhm.
troubleshooting those two areas and then moving on to other areas. So
Yeah.
it's like gratitude is
Mhm,
such a good idea.
mhm, mhm. I think what's coming up for me, and I don't know whether this is something you hear often or if this is just me being me, but
Yeah.
in my mind, I don't think this was ever conscious. It's only coming up now
Yeah.
because you're mentioning this. The idea of offering gratitude and like saying what
Yeah.
you appreciate. I think historically in my mind, I used to make it almost be like if I'm appreciating him, then like somehow I'm not also appreciating myself. Like I'm giving, it's like almost like if there was it's almost like a me or him rather than me and him. Which
Yeah.
is so interesting because I don't consciously ever think that. Like, if I recognize him, it means I like, what about me? Like that what about me piece of it, I
Yeah.
think can get obliterated when I think we remember, wait, I can offer him gratitude and appreciation. It doesn't mean that I'm also not doing amazing things and can offer gratitude and appreciation to myself. I think that is, yeah, I wonder whether you notice that coming up a lot or is that just me being
I
being
think
crazy?
I think that's why we do the exercise where you especially a lot of people who come to me where they want a better marriage, they feel
Mm.
underseen in some way.
Mm.
And so we want to cultivate your own ability to see yourself, even as we
Mhm.
cultivate what's going on with your relationship and how do you want to be seen by your partner. Like it doesn't mean we
Mhm.
ignore that part, but we
Mhm.
do want to say, well, no, you could be proud of you. You don't have to wait for somebody else to be, you can be
Mhm.
proud right now.
Right.
So that's why we can use it towards the partner. And you can
Mhm.
also do 30 days of gratitude, acknowledging yourself and see what that
Yeah.
feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I also I've been thinking about this because I have found historically, this is before coaching with my son or with my husband, this feeling like not feeling connected or not feeling that deep love
Mhm,
was unfortunately my lived experience. Like I'm the
mhm,
one that is not getting to feel the connection and the love, right?
mhm,
So
mhm,
I think that sometimes, at least in the coaching relationships that I've seen, we keep waiting for us to
mhm,
receive the love and to receive the feelings of connection and appreciation. But we can
mhm,
actually get that by appreciating the other person and loving the other person. And like, what
mhm.
about loving on them? You get to experience the love too.
Absolutely. You get to experience the love too. And it's like
Yeah.
anything in life where you're waiting for something outside of yourself to experience the thing that you're craving.
Hmm.
My invitation to everyone listening, including to you, is to
Yeah.
not wait.
Yes.
Is to like
Yes.
what's in the way between me and this thing that I'm craving in the
Yeah.
healthy, loving way. And it's
Yeah.
really like holding two opposites. Like I know that everyone listening, we're intelligent humans, we can
Hmm.
think in nuanced ways, and we can
Hmm.
hold a paradox or a duality at the same time. So
Yeah.
do we live in community with others and do their reactions matter?
Hmm.
Yes, 100%.
Hmm.
But do we have so much control over our internal experience of how we experience their reactions and how we can cultivate something that we're craving, like appreciation? Also, yes. It's like one thing doesn't make the other thing less true.
Hmm.
And we do navigate how to manage both our
Hmm.
relationship with other humans and our relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
But just waiting for another human to give us that thing that we want, it's like, wait, how do I show up like embodying that thing
Mm.
that I want?
I wonder because this what like the very first thought that comes to me when you mention that, like what's ever
Yeah.
in the way
Yeah.
of offering gratitude or being intimate, having sex with your partner.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't feel love, if you
Yeah.
don't feel the connection,
Yeah.
especially for women, this is like as an OBGYN, I remember I would see so
Yeah.
many of my patients, especially
Yeah.
after the age after they had kids. For
Right.
sure. There'd be
Yeah.
a time period where they would come and they really felt at a loss, like low libido, just they don't have desire, but
Mhm.
they know that they want to be in this partnership. They want their
Mhm.
relationship to be better, but they have no desire. They're not feeling connected. They're not feeling the love. Maybe some of it is, of course, when you're immediately postpartum, but I just mean in general, after having kids, I think this is such a common one.
Mhm.
And I think that that's a big obstacle. This feeling, at least it feels like a big obstacle to me, is well, I don't feel connected. I don't feel love. I don't feel the desire. And
Mhm.
so then because I'm not having the feeling, I don't take the action of initiating intimacy or
Yeah.
offering appreciation or offering I don't
Yeah.
take those actions because I'm not feeling
Yeah.
those emotions. So what do you say to that?
I think we have to investigate why that's happening.
Mm.
It's easy to say I feel no desire, but it's a little
Mhm.
harder to say, well, why don't you feel any desire? Oh, for the last 7 days, I've worked for 12 hours.
Yeah.
And before then, in the case of having a baby or something, my mother-in-law was living in my house for the last 3 months, helping me with the baby. Like, in I'm not
Right.
in Latin culture, that would be a very
Yeah.
common thing that would happen is like
Yeah.
a family member or somebody, right, would come and
Yeah.
help with the baby.
Yeah.
And so, is it actually no desire? Or is it
Mm.
something physiological? Is it something practical? Like how many hours am I working? At what
Mm.
point it's almost like, do I have space to feel desire at all?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's the label we give it is, oh, I just don't feel any desire. But if we
Right, right.
ask a few questions, we can
Mhm,
determine, are you exhausted? Are you having
mm,
something else going on? Is it something
mhm,
physiological, hormonal that you do need to have
mhm,
the support of someone on your medical team to run
mhm,
some tests and check and see, right?
mhm,
Do we need
mhm,
to rule any of that out or
mhm,
not?
mhm.
And then there's how are you relating with your partner? So maybe the baby came. I've seen this a lot where partners are really wonderful at being partners. And then you
Mhm.
have this idea of how they're going to be as parents, and then they're not that.
They're not
And
that,
then
right.
and then there's this disappointment that is
Mhm,
happening and a grief for the thing you thought was going to be and how you were going to handle it, and then it's not that anymore. So
right.
notice that with no desire, we could have just in this one set of examples 6 different reasons, right?
Right.
Like it could
Yeah,
be I'm exhausted. It could be I have a
yes.
family member here and it just,
Yeah,
I don't feel whatever. It could be I have
yeah.
all these thoughts about how my partner should be showing up and they're not. All of these different things could be influencing something that appears as no desire, but it's really, if we get underneath it, there's things that are solvable in that that could
Mhm.
create desire.
Yes, I that's so good. I love that you said that. This is a it actually kind of makes me think about like if you think about a model
Yeah.
and really imagine I don't feel like connecting. I don't feel like being intimate. And it's because I have no desire. I think most people kind of that's the full stop. That's like the end of the
Yeah.
sentence. And like that kind of creates a drift in the relationship because we stop connecting, right?
Yeah.
But what you're saying, I think, is okay, we are saying I have no desire, but I want this relationship. I
Yeah.
have desire and I want to have desire. I don't have
Yeah.
it now, but it's something that I want for my future. So, like asking the question, I wonder why I don't
Correct.
have the desire rather than assuming I just don't have desire, like end of
And it's
sentence. Like,
gone forever and there's nothing
and
else to
it's
do about it. Yeah.
that's right. And this actually speaks to a lot of like my experience. I remember as a physician, like the number two, like the top two reasons that
Mhm.
people would have low libido if it wasn't like an anatomical or physiologic situation, it was fatigue and stress.
See?
I mean,
Yeah.
fatigue and stress, and I think the issue is especially for high achievers who don't have coaching support is
Right.
it's they don't know how to get to the root cause of their fatigue and stress. And so
Yeah.
we kind of keep putting the band-aid solutions on, right?
Right.
Let me go out for a mani pedi and maybe now I won't maybe now I'll feel
Relaxed.
relaxed. And that's not where we solve fatigue and stress from, as you and I know.
Yeah.
It's actually solving your fatigue and stress might actually be the answer to desire. Of course, looking into the other reasons, but that's so important to look at. If you feel that, to ask
Yeah.
why.
There's a great book called Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski that
Mhm,
talks about the science of sex in a very approachable, easy way to understand. I always
mhm.
recommend this book. And one of the things she talks about there is this exactly is in
Yeah.
order to understand and really unleash our sexual self, we have to understand how stress appears in our
Mhm,
life and in our bodies.
mhm.
And another thing she talks about there, and there's a name for this theory that escapes me right now, but basically the essence of it is um, you have accelerators and you have brakes.
Mhm.
There are things that turn you on and there's things that turn you off. So whether it's a new baby who has come to the family, whether
Right.
it's a new job, whether you just moved, whether your kids change schools, like there are
Mhm.
things happening in your life that can
Mhm.
contribute to your turn-ons and your turn-offs. And just knowing, oh, you know what turns me on? When I have spaciousness,
Mhm.
when maybe I enjoy having sex in the morning and I always try to have it at night. It
Mhm.
could be that simple for some people. It's like,
Mhm.
wait, what is it that I need? For
Mhm.
some other people, now you have two kids instead of one. Maybe
Mhm.
you've moved around how you are in the house, and now the just having the door closed, you
Mhm.
still have that part of you that's like, what if they knock on the door? What if something's going on?
Right.
What if something's happening?
Right.
Right. And then it's like, wait, okay, that's a turn off.
Exactly. Yeah.
What do we need to do? Do they need to be outside of the
Mhm.
house? Do we need to send them on a play date? What needs to happen so that you can
Mhm.
relax?
Yeah. And I love that. First of all, we're totally taking the direction of the conversation to having
Yeah.
sex with your partner. But the
Yeah.
other thing that I think is also super important, I'm curious how you coach on this, but at least as a
Yeah.
physician, I remember I would talk to my patients about this, is
Yeah.
having like being really honest
Yeah.
in a conversation with your partner about
Yes.
it. I think because the topic often, I don't know about often, but at least for the patients that I would see, it felt almost like they felt a little ashamed. They felt embarrassed. There was like the topic is it's almost like this taboo topic that we don't talk about so freely, that they also wouldn't talk about it with themselves or with their
Yes.
partners, maybe with their bestie, like, right, maybe with your girlfriends, you like are able to have this conversation, but
Mhm.
somehow you're not able to have that honest, maybe it feels vulnerable conversation with your partner. And so not surprisingly, there's a disconnect with what their expectations are, what your desires are, and like how do you start, instead of drifting apart, how do you start coming closer together? It has to start with actually sharing like where
Yes.
you are in the conversation. What do you think about that from like a coaching perspective?
100%. So part of that whole gratitude is if we think about it like making deposits in an emotional bank account.
Mhm.
So the idea of an emotional bank account is something that the Gottman Institute talks and teaches about, which is like we make all these deposits, and then when we need to make a withdrawal, there's something there to withdraw.
Yeah.
If we don't make any deposits when there's something to withdraw, we go like emotionally bankrupt. There's nothing there to
Mhm.
support this withdrawal. So when we're expressing gratitude and we're just laughing and having a good time, and then we need to talk about something serious, it's like, oh, we have so much goodwill stored up between the two of us, we could just bring something up and it's okay. But if we have no goodwill stored up between the two of us, it makes it
Right.
much harder. So that's one
Mm.
piece of it. The other thing you mentioned is how people don't talk even to their friends, or sometimes maybe they do to their friends.
Yeah.
I have given for coaching homework so many times, go make a friend,
Mhm.
because sometimes we put all our emotional eggs in one basket, which is in our partner's basket.
Mhm.
And that is not good for any relationship. Having
Mhm.
other people you can talk to. Very often I'll ask people, who else have you talked to about this? Like, who else are you sharing this with? And very often the answer is no one.
Right.
And you do group programs and I do group programs where you have
Yeah.
people on the same journey in a constructive
Oh,
way, in a
yeah.
powerful way, being able to talk about really delicate things, whether it's weight loss
Yes.
or my marriage, that
Yeah.
are going to embrace it and not make anybody the
Mhm.
villain. Just be like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
here for you, girl, kind of vibe
Yes.
is
Yeah, and I
so
think, like,
important.
even in that, it's like I think it gives what I love about, I think, a group coaching experience is you
Yeah.
get to validate that you're not
Yes.
alone in this, and this is the piece, I think, especially at I feel like there's something that high achieving women, like, there's something about they're so powerful, they're so strong, they know that they're, like, kick-ass leaders, and yet
Yes.
sometimes there's a loneliness with
Yes.
that experience, and I think kind of being in a group coaching container or even
Yeah.
in a marriage or partnership, like
Yeah.
being able to talk about it out loud, out of
Yes.
your own brain. I think it, number one, you get to become so much more aware of what is
Yes.
happening for you. And number two, and this is, I'm just going to go on a little tangent. I think that
Yeah.
sometimes you think you know what's in your head.
Yeah.
When you start talking, you're like, whoa, what
Where'd that
was,
come from?
where did that even
Yes.
come? I had no idea I had some, some of these subconscious paradigms driving me. But,
Yeah.
and I think the second piece is like, then you get to start validating it, knowing you're not alone. You hear somebody else
Yes.
have that, or your partner might actually mirror back to you
Yes.
the same things. Like you have this desire and they actually might have that desire too. You just haven't talked about it.
Yes.
Oh, that's so good. And so when you think about like really taking that step, that first step where you are saying, okay, I know that I want something. I know that
Yeah.
I'm the one that wants it. I
Right.
want to go first. Maybe right now I'm not feeling the desire or the connection or the love. And so I have not been taking the action of initiating or recognizing.
Yeah.
Do you have like any kind of tangible steps or tips for like how to take that very first step? I feel like those very first few steps sometimes feel the hardest. And then once you start taking them, you get into a rhythm. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that?
I think, I mean, you could take it from a lot of angles. The simplest thing I would say is like, what kind of relationship do I want to have?
Hmm.
Do I want us to be loving and kind to each other? Do I want us to
Hmm.
be supportive? What do I want?
Yeah.
For so many women, that's a very hard question to answer because we have prioritized everyone else instead of ourselves for many, many years very often.
Yeah.
And we have lost touch with what we want.
Hmm.
And so I say that it sounds simple, but I know some of you are going to hear that and be like, I don't even know.
Oh, that's such a common answer. I don't know. You think you
Yeah.
know, you don't know when you until you get asked the question.
Yeah.
You don't actually know.
So,
Yeah.
but we do need to figure that out because that's going to dictate
Mhm.
what our first steps are, right? If I want
Mm,
more appreciation, I'm going to go in that direction. If I want more sex, I'm going to go in a different direction, right? If I want
right.
a vacation or if I want to change my schedule, like what I want informs the actions that we take.
Yeah.
So I would say the next question someone very often I get asked is like, well, if I don't know what I want, then what do I do, right?
Mm,
And here's my invitation that for anybody who feels disconnected from their own wanting is to just start this evening or start tomorrow with noticing what you want to wear, what you
mhm,
want to eat,
mhm,
where you want to go for lunch. Start noticing the small wants and connecting
mm.
with the small. If you're that person that anybody asks you to lunch and you're like, where do you want to go? Pick a place.
Right. Pick a place that you want.
Let
Yes.
yourself
Yeah.
feel a little bit uncomfortable and you
Right.
pick a place. If it's the show you're going to watch on TV tonight, you pick the show, right?
Mhm.
Just to practice in a very tiny, non-threatening ways, right? If you're like, I
Yes.
want to go to Bali for 6 months, don't
Right.
start with that.
Right. Right.
That's not the point.
Oh, I love this. Yes. It's
Yeah.
almost like the image that I'm getting in my mind, it's like this little muscle
Yes.
that's always been there. It's like not we're not
Yes.
inventing a muscle. We're not
No.
inserting a muscle into your body. Like it's all
No.
already there.
Yeah.
And as children, we all had it. It was actually
Yes.
very powerful as children. And it's somewhere along the way, it just atrophied because of society and programming and all the things we
Yes.
learn, as especially as women.
Yeah.
But I think what you're talking about is it feels like such a safe way to practice flexing the muscle again. And
Yes.
like it's going to feel a little uncomfortable, but it's in small moments. And then you get to see, oh, like I survived that. And oh, and I got
Yes.
to watch my show and I got to pick, oh, okay. So I
Yes.
not only did I survive, but I also
Yeah.
got something that I wanted. And look at me. I feel so good
Yes.
about that. And then you can like
Yeah.
dial up the volume
And
on
I
how you
think
do that.
I think that just for fun, you could allow yourself to want something really outlandish.
Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
you can one of the things we do is we think, well, I can't have that, so I'm not going to give myself permission to want it. And then
Hmm.
we taper down our own desire.
Yeah.
So, for example, someone listening to us right now might want to be a guest on your show one day. That might be their dream.
Mm.
Allow yourself to want it. Don't
Hmm.
all email Priyanka at the same time, but allow yourself to
Right.
hold that in your heart, right?
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
from Miami and I grew up in Miami and I always joke around that I would like to go to Gloria Stefan's house and have
Hmm.
lemonade on
Hmm.
her porch and her patio with on the
Mm.
bay, looking at the bay.
Mhm.
And I know that's unlikely to occur, but I
Mhm.
delight in allowing myself to just have that be something I want. I think it would be cool. I think it would be
Yeah.
fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so and I think that what gets in the way of that sometimes, I'm curious if this has been your experience with your clients, but I think what gets in the way is we want to be practical.
Yeah.
And so we allow I call it like the guise of practicality because I think it's a
Yes.
guise. I don't think it's real practicality. Practically,
Yes.
you could totally go to her house,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
we have this guise of practicality thinking that if I allow my wants to be big, if I
Yes.
allow it to kind of come to the daylight for my wants to be heard, then I'm going to be so disappointed when it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's like we're trying to be practical and protecting ourselves from disappointment, which is why the muscle atrophies
Yes.
to
And
begin
think
with.
about that.
Yes.
Like you're just disappointed ahead of time. You're just saying,
Yes.
no, I want that, but I can't have it. You're just deciding ahead of time that you're not going to get it, as opposed to,
Yeah.
well, what would need to happen for me to go to Gloria Stefan's house? Maybe I'll write an article for a magazine. Maybe she'll read
Right.
it. Maybe I'll pitch her some special thing. I don't know. I mean, if I
Right.
really wanted it
Right.
more deeply,
Right.
I might do something about it. But
I
right
mean,
now,
Maggie, you would totally figure out how to do this. I'm sure
I
you
would
would.
probably figure it out. But right now, my growth is just to allow myself to want it and be in the
Mhm.
wanting of it
Yeah.
and let that be
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. I almost want like a theme of this episode, anybody listening,
Yeah.
to know that it's okay to want, even in your
Yes.
it's okay to want a better relationship. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything is bad. It's okay
Yeah.
to want it to be better. It's okay.
Yes.
It's like okay to want things and to give yourself permission, and there's safety in wanting, even when it might
Yes.
start out uncomfortable. I think that this is definitely for me too. Like everything you're saying, it's like I know that I have allowed myself to want in certain areas,
Yeah.
and I think that for me, what I have done, I think a lot of women do this, is if it also serves other women, then it's
Great.
like then it's almost like my wants are more justified, or maybe
It's
they're
like
more
it's
noble.
allowed.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
noble. It's like if I'm helping women,
Yeah.
like for my business, if I'm helping other women, then
Yeah.
it feels like a more noble reason to want to do and work on my business and invest in my business and take my business to the next level because I'm serving women. Right?
Right.
Rather than I can just
Yeah.
want it just
Because
for
you want
me
it.
because I
Yeah.
want it. And I think that that is a piece, like this idea of nobility, and like it's shameful to want something just for you, like it's selfish. I think that that is a huge, huge, huge roadblock. It's just like programming for so
Yes.
many women.
And that's one of the places where then to tie it to what you do all the time is then we overeat because we
Mhm.
didn't let ourselves want any of the other really substantial things we actually want. But then I can eat the Oreo, so I'm gonna eat that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I at least deserve this.
Right.
Right. And what we are choosing is the lowest common denominator thing.
Yeah. As
There are so
opposed
many better
to,
things. Yeah.
yeah. As opposed to like, what do I deeply want? What lights me up? What if I wanted that? And what if
Mm.
you had permission to want it, even if it helped no one? The
Mhm.
thing is, when women are blessed or grow in their careers and their business, whenever we do cool stuff on earth, everybody wins, like always, every time.
100%. Yep.
But it doesn't have to be that everybody wins, just us winning is
Yeah.
enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing to ask ourselves. I
Yeah.
kind of sometimes I give myself things to think about. I was recently at a business event when we were talking about making money as women business owners. And somebody said, well, it's not about the money for me. I'm like, why not? Because we're culturally programmed as women.
Absolutely.
Our impact is the most
Mhm.
important thing.
Mhm.
But I was like, what if I just want to make a lot of money and
Mhm.
I just am interested in the money? And what if I transform thousands of marriages in the process of making these piles of money I want to make? Like,
Mhm.
who cares? Who cares
Yeah.
if I want the money?
Yeah.
I do want to have an impact. That is real,
Yeah.
right? But I
Yeah.
just take my brain to this place where it's like, but what if it didn't even matter? What if I just helped all of these people
Yes.
express more gratitude and have more sex and live better lives
Yes. Yeah.
just because I wanted
Yeah.
piles of money? Why not?
Yes. And actually what you were saying at the very start of this episode, kind of
Yeah,
tying back into that, like, first of all, nobody else has to benefit from it. Doesn't
yeah,
have to be a noble cause,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
think that like just the way that the universe works, there's no way around it.
yeah,
When you change, when you transform your brain, when you level up every part of your life, when you allow your wants to be heard, when you stop overeating, when you repair a marriage or connect or love more,
yeah,
because you change in
yeah.
doing that, like everything in your orbit will have to change because of what you were saying at the start. Remember you were
Systems
saying
theory.
systems theory, like everything in your life changes. This is literally, I mean, I remember I shared this on the podcast before, but I got into coaching because of weight loss. I weighed 200 pounds, wanted to lose the weight. That's how I discovered coaching. That was my avenue in.
Yeah,
But all of these avenues, whether you come in because of your marriage or because of coaching, what you really are changing is your relationship with yourself,
yep.
always, and the impact of that on your family, on your work, on your society. It's just
The
it just
ripple effect is
yes.
uncalculable.
Yes.
Uncalculable. Yeah,
Yeah. And my husband recognized it, who's not like, for him to recognize, because of that coaching thing that you do, that you did, like
yeah,
you've changed the trajectory of our children's lives for him to say that,
Yes.
that was like a moment that he was appreciating me when
Yes.
I was caught off guard, because that's not his typical
Yeah.
style. He's a very logical,
Yeah.
like techie kind of person, but he was like,
Mhm.
that it's changed them.
Yeah.
And then it changes generations because of systems theory.
There you go.
It's
So fun.
so good, so fun. Okay, so I feel like we have been talking everybody really to really understand that relationships deserve your attention if you want it and it's available to you. Maggie, how can people find you? How can they hear
Yes.
more about you? How can they work with you? Tell us everything. We're gonna have to do this again.
I love it so much. So my website is maggiereyes.com. So it's MAGGIEREYES.com. Anything that I'm up to, you will always be able to find it there. I like to hang out on Instagram too. I'm at the Maggie Reyes on Instagram. If you want to share your takeaway from this episode, I'd love to hear it. Tag us
Oh
and
yes,
tell
tag
us.
us.
We love to
Mhm,
celebrate that.
mhm.
What's your Instagram?
The unstoppable mom brain.
The Unstoppable Mom Brain, the Maggie Reyes. Tag us and tell us your favorite part. Are you going to
Mhm,
express gratitude? Are you going to want allow yourself to want something? We want to know.
mhm.
So those
Yes.
are the two best places to just check out whatever's happening in my world.
Love it. And everybody check out her podcast, check out her group. I'm going to have all of your information in the show notes for anyone that
Great.
missed the spellings of things. Like you can always go
Yes.
find out right there. And I just love these conversations. Seriously, like these podcast conversations for me have become one of my delights about the podcast where I get to bring on people that I think of as my friends, people that have inspired me. And Maggie is one of those people that hasn't only, I don't think of you as just a friend. I think of you as someone that has inspired me. You have coached me hard in the past.
This is
And I
true.
love it so much. And I think that I just think you are amazing and so valuable. So thank you for what you do. And everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode and we will see you back next week. Bye.